David Brewster here with a new episode of Soloing Secrets, and this is Ace Frehley, another legend of the electric guitar. Definitely a pioneering legend and a huge influence in rock, hard rock, and metal guitar. Without question, love Kiss or leave Kiss. There's no question. Kiss definitely influenced the entire world. There are millions of guitarists that decided to pick up the electric guitar and start playing because of Ace Frehley, Paul Stanley, of course, Gene Simmons and Peter Criss. The entire band influenced the world to pick up a bass or begin singing, start playing drums, start playing guitar. And I've always loved that, aside from the fact that, yeah, maybe Kiss really isn't, virtuoso musicians. It's not like Dream Theater or something, but it's that raw human element. There's a little bit of science fiction, maybe a little bit of comic, kind of influence in there too with the makeup and the costumes and everything. So there's like this fantasy science fiction world surrounding Kiss, and I've been a fan since I was a kid. I've actually been an Ace Frehley fan before I even played a guitar. I was aware of who Kiss was. I remember listening to Kiss Alive 2 in my bedroom, hopelessly strumming my sister's tennis racket, jumping off my bed, running around my room listening to Shock Me and some of those songs. I've always loved Kiss. They rock. So much like we've done in other episodes of the Soloing Secrets series, whenever you're targeting a certain band or guitarist or musician, it's always a good idea to check out their influences, and that's going to uncover some of the habits and little traits and things that they like to do in their music. And with Ace Frehley, it's interesting that a lot of his influences we've talked about in the Soloing Secrets series. Legendary guitarists, Jimmy Page, Eric Clapton, Jeff Beck, and players like that. But here's an image showing about 10, Ace Frehley, musical influences. And with a player like Ace Frehley, he actually has a lot of signature moves and ideas that pop up in his music. And, minor pentatonic and hybrid, pentatonic scales, open string pull-off licks, and bending ideas. His signature, very wide vibrato moves and all sorts of stuff. But here's an image kind of revealing some of Ace Frehley's soloing secrets. When I was doing the prep work and finding photos of Ace and stuff for this episode, I stumbled upon this really cool poster, and I think it was actually from an old guitar magazine. And the photo was taken in 1977, and it shows Ace Frehley's guitar collection at that time. And definitely, in '77, Kiss was on top of the world. They were arguably one of the most popular bands in the entire world. Maybe a notch below Led Zeppelin, but they were way up there. But check out his guitar stash here. It's so cool. The music and examples in this episode came from one Kiss album, and not to discredit their studio albums, which are legendary and very important, but there is one album in all of Kiss's catalog of music and albums that it seems like everybody points to. They talk about it, they refer to it, and I've heard legends of the guitar talk about this album. Of course, I'm talking about Kiss Alive, which is on the wall, but I've heard Paul Gilbert, Dimebag Darrell. There's tons of players. Andy Timmons, I've heard him talking about Ace Frehley and Alive. And it's that very essential, important blueprint or template that delivers Ace Frehley's playing style. And you can hear it all over that album, and then it transfers over into studio albums, eventually as solo material, Frehley's Comet, and all the more recent stuff. But without question, Kiss Alive rocks. We are going to talk about the opening jam a little bit later in this lesson. I'm going to share some of the licks and stuff that I played right there. But to start this lesson off in the right place, we need to talk a little bit about Ace's favorite scales, which he definitely loves pentatonic scales, and he'll dip into some other scales too, natural minor and stuff. But he loves pentatonic, the blues scale, and hybrid pentatonic scales. So when you talk about these, at least briefly, so we're going to hit these in the key of A right here, just to kind of move through his favorite scales. A minor pentatonic, A blues or A minor blues, the same scale, just add the flat 5, that E flat right there. Right? And then the elusive hybrid pentatonic scales. And really we're just adding chromatic notes to, the minor pentatonic and the blues scale. And one of Ace's favorite hybrid pentatonics is right here. pentatonic, think of A minor blues. And we're just going to add basically this G sharp right there. Extend this to where you're doing this, kind of 3-note pattern. That's also a very common hybrid pentatonic scale. We looked at that in the Jeff Beck Soloing Secrets right here. It's kind of like everything in the kitchen sink right there. It's here, 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 right here, right there, and then. Now for a song example using some of these hybrid pentatonic scales, check out the end of the solo from the song Deuce, and you'll hear this. Right. One more time there. So we're coming down like this A to G, E to D, D to C, and then A to G right there. I've also seen this written up here. You could do it up there if you want. It sounds more like this. It's got that little thinner sound on the higher strings. And then come down like this. So think of that A minor, hybrid pentatonic right there. You're doing. Ace likes to do with some of these pentatonic shapes is he creates these quick hammer-on pull-off flutters, and he does this quite a bit. And I also associate these flutters with Tony Iommi from Black Sabbath. Ace Frehley and Tony, like to do this. And this came from Cold Gin. It's like the second fill in the song, like this. One more time. Gin's in the key of A, and this is going to feel like E minor pentatonic over A right there, but he's doing this. And he's just doing kind of a quick hammer-on pull-off between that E and G, and then stops on that D note on the B string, like that, and then do the same thing all the way down. Right, like that. Really interesting lick, and I like that. It catches your attention because you hear that fluttering kind of legato movement. So Ace definitely likes pull-offs, and he does pull-off patterns a lot, either to an open string or a group of notes or a cluster of notes. And this came from Deuce once again, and it's something like this. One more time. I've also noticed Ace likes to repeat things 5 times, either 3 or 5 times, and this is 5. But he's doing this kind of staggered, this A and C right there, and then this D, D flat to C. And do that 5 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Kind of a simple lick, but it's definitely, kind of biting the way he picks it and everything. During live solos, Ace would commonly do these really rapid, open string pull-off licks, and I definitely think of Randy Rhoads and Kirk Hammett and players like that, but those ideas kind of trace back to Ace Frehley. And this is basically an exercise, or kind of a lick idea based around some of these licks that you might hear Ace whip out. And it's something like this. And right there, we're literally just pulling off, the C, A to E. And then I move that up a whole step, that D, B to E. Back to that C, A, E. And then move that down a half step, and there's B, G sharp to E. And I kind of did that twice right there. Now do it again on the B string. Do it right here. You can play it on the G string right here. And you could definitely experiment with that on the lower, like wound strings, but that's kind of, you know, the move that Ace liked to do with some of those, you know, licks and stuff that he'd perform in his live solos. Or with the opening jam, that was basically the song She, and there's nothing wrong with the studio version, but I love the live version that's on Alive, and there's an extended Ace Frehley solo, and it's loose, and they're jamming. But during that section, that's like the middle section of the song, and you hear this kind of sludgy, you know, G minor 7 riff, like this. That B flat to C, and then you're bouncing back and forth between that F and G and grabbing that little part of G minor 7 right there, like that. And then eventually you hear Ace play this solo right here. It's all out of, you know, G minor pentatonic based right there. And he's starting with this kind of half-step bending idea all the way down the scale like this. So he's actually starting outside the scale. He's grabbing A and then bending that a half step to B flat. Like that, but he's doing it with a bend. Right? Do that all the way down the scale. You hear two distinct unison bends right here. And we're going to talk about unison bends in just a second, but there's two of them right there. And then you hear... And you hear that. You distinctly hear him move an octave higher, and then all of a sudden he does the same lick, or at least the first half, right here. Right? The same thing we did right here. But way up here. And then you hear this very distinct lick. It sounds like a bending lick, but it's really just a pull-off lick, and he's doing... Right? So he actually does that 5 times. Once again, he loves 5s. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then... Classic guitar solo right there for sure, and it's pretty much note for note as far as what you'll hear on Alive. Now we're going to tackle some of Ace's bending and vibrato secrets, and there's a lot to tackle, you know, when you're looking at this area of his playing. And the first thing we're going to do here is I'm going to play a clip of him playing this lick, you know, from a live concert, and it's just, I don't know, like signature Ace Frehley. It has all this clucky, plucky kind of action happening, very staccato, and it's really just one note, a single bent note. I guess there's technically 2 notes, but a single bent note, and you hear this extremely expressive picking, and there's really nothing going on. There's no Yngwie lick or crazy shred, but there's such an emotive, you know, distinct signature sound happening right here. I mean, it's totally Ace Frehley. So I'm not gonna lie, this is hard to do because you're playing staccato bending. It's very choppy. And he's bending that single note, and then he's doing the sneaky upstroke, and then a downstroke that's very staccato and accented, like this. And that's really hard to do. Because you're definitely kind of getting that double pick, but you don't really hear the first pick as much. Definitely has this clucky, plucky kind of sound, very staccato. And that's kind of what I'm doing right there, is I'm isolating that G string and picking the crap out of it. So spend some time with that and play around with his really staccato picking. Up next in Ace's bending universe are unison bends, and these can be very elusive and kind of confusing until you've had them broken down and demonstrated like this. And Ace uses unison bends all the time. And unison bends are extremely common. Think of Hendrix and Jimmy Page, and there's tons of players that use these. But we're going to basically play a G unison bend right here. So we're going to fret this G note on the 8th fret on the B string, fret this F note on the 10th fret on the G, And we're going to bend that F up to match that fretted G back there, which is going to create a unison, just like this. And you can actually hear when the notes match, or it kind of comes in tune right there. Because you want that to be the exact same pitch. And you can tell when you're out of tune. And you can tell when it gets in tune like that. Just imagine you're working on Sober by Tool, and that's actually kind of a good, just demonstration for getting, a unison bend in tune. So that's a G right there. We could take that, move that up a whole step, and then bend this G note up on the G string to A, and then that's magically an A unison right there. Take where we originally had this G, move that down a minor third, there's a D, bend that up a whole step, and now you're playing an E right there. And you can think of Kiss songs, think of Black Diamond, and you'll hear this. And right there you can definitely hear, this G bent to an A unison right there. And then you hear this B bent to a C, just kind of moving back and forth a half step right there. And then this, right there at the end. And that's, on the G and B string, doing a unison bend right there. Now you can also do this on the high E and B, and you can kind of decide, do you want to bend this with your third finger or with your pinky? And that's going to extend, the shape we had here. When you do it on the B and the high E, you have to move this additional note up an extra fret right there. So it's a little different feel right there. And like I said, you can use your third finger or your pinky for those unison bends on top. For some more of this unison bend action and also some of Ace's wide vibrato, check out the solo from Deuce, like this. Right there, we're literally doing a unison bend and also a double stop. And you can definitely hear the unison bend turn into a double stop right after you do it. And then you hear that really wide. And it ends with a trill right there. Actually a good way to kind of work on some of these unison bends and bending ideas. Now for some more of this intense bending action from Ace, check out the outro solo from Deuce, and you'll hear a lick like this. Right? Really throaty and aggressive too, but grab that, that high C up to that D. And then this little hammer-on pull-off, and then you're going to grab this G to A, like that hammer-on pull-off again, and then you're going to grab this D, bend that to E, and then do that second bending move again. So it's really tricky because you've got this happening in between these bends. That's going to wrap this episode of Soloing Secrets with Ace Frehley. Definitely very important and influential, legendary rock guitarist for sure. And I've been an Ace Frehley fan since, like I mentioned at the beginning, since I was a little kid. And Kiss was before my time. I mean, I started listening to Kiss and their makeup was already off and stuff. Ace was already out of the band by the time I figured out who Kiss was. But there was just something about their music. And then when I started playing guitar, I went back and revisited some of their music because I thought, well, hey, I want to learn some of that Kiss stuff that I used to like when I was a kid. And even though my memory of some of the songs was a little fuzzy, his guitar playing just stood out to me, back when I was like 12 or 13 years old and I heard it. And I thought, wow, okay, I love Van Halen, but I can't do all that stuff Eddie's doing. But I did discover I could play Ace Frehley licks. I could play like little pieces and parts of some of the songs, early on. And that was huge, you know, to be able to do that, where I thought, wow, okay, I can't play like Steve Vai or Yngwie yet, but I can do kind of a Ace Frehley thing, you know, and I worked on that. So it's definitely a stepping stone, definitely a very important guitarist for lots of players out there. So anyway, leave some feedback and comments. Please subscribe to Lessons, and I'll be back before you know it with more content and material. Thank you.